Hello everyone and welcome to AzamSharp YouTube channel. And in this video, I'm going to show you that how you can use property wrappers to validate your SwiftUI interface or SwiftUI form. Now you might be wondering, why are we on ASP.NET website and why are we looking at adding validation to the model in C#? Well, I always believe that the more technologies that you know and the more technologies that you have worked on or worked with, it will give you more advantage, as you can always look at those technologies and try to see if those things like attributes and validation implemented in ASP.NET or React or Flutter, those things can be incorporated in SwiftUI. So that's why it's very important for us iOS developers to always be looking at other technologies also. Now I'm on the learn.microsoft.com website and I'm looking at this article, adding validation to model. Now, when I was working with Microsoft, like long time ago, when I was working with .NET and ASP.NET, we use attributes-based validation. So over here you can see that there is a required attribute that have been placed on a property called title. And this means that this property title is required, and if you don't provide any value for the title, then it will generate the error and it will say title is required. Now, these are called attributes in C#, but we can do a similar thing by creating property wrappers. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about that how you can use property wrapper to create a similar behavior. Let's go back to our code. Now, over here you can see that there's not really much going on, right? I mean, we started with a basic app, we have a content view, we don't even have a view state or a form. So let's go ahead and create a form. So when I'm creating a form, I'll remove all of this. I'll create a form, and we'll try to create a very simple form which will have a text field where you can enter your username. That will go into a username, and you can have another text field which is probably for the password, and text can be password. Now there is no such thing as username and password, so that's why it is complaining, but not to worry, we can create a state variables as string and assign it with empty string values. There we go, password. Great. Now this is all fine, but it would be nice if we can actually extract this information out into some sort of a struct. Now I'm not talking about a view model. I mean, if you want to call it view model, that's fine, but it's not really going to be an observable object. It's just going to be a really simple struct, okay? And the reason that I want to extract it out to a struct is I can then decorate it with property wrappers, just like they're doing it for the movie class. Now, yes, I can still decorate probably these values, username and password, with property wrappers, but it will make a little bit more cleaner approach if I extract it out to a struct. Now, since that struct, login struct or login state, whatever you want to call it, will only be for the content view or the login screen, I can actually create it inside over here. I can say login state. Again, the name, you can put any name you want. And we can create, or we can just grab these properties and put it inside that particular state. There we go. Now we don't really need these extra username and password properties. This means that in the content view, now we can define this as a login state. So I can go over here and I can create, let's say, login state, and we can call it login state. And since I have put the username and password into the login state, now I can refer it easily from our text right there. So this is all great. This will also give me an opportunity to decorate my properties inside the login state with some attributes. Now, don't worry, we don't really have this attribute, so what I'm about to write is obviously not going to work. But I think in the end, what we are doing here, or what we do require, is something like this, right? I mean, we don't really have any attribute called required, so that's why it is complaining. But what if we did? Then it will look nicer, kind of like exactly like over here, they're doing it with ASP.NET with the required attribute. They also have different attributes like range, string length, maybe even regular expression, and so on. And this gives them an extension point. This means that if there is a new validation you want to add, maybe for a, let's say, a US passport number or social security number, so you can easily add a new property wrapper like SSN maybe and validate those things. So it definitely gives you that extension point that you're looking for that will allow you to easily extend these things. All right. So let's go ahead and create this required property wrapper. We'll create the required property wrapper right here. Now I'm just creating it in a single file because I'll just give you the gist, but it would be a good idea to create this required property wrapper in a separate folder or even in a separate package so that you can use all of these things in different projects. We'll start with var value string. This will be the actual value on which the required property wrapper is being applied. And we will also decorate it with the property wrapper attribute over there. Now, whenever we do that, we need to implement the wrapped value. So let's go ahead and create that property. We'll say wrapped, oops, I don't know why it's not complaining over here. Let's see over here. Wrapped value. Well, wrapped value, what we will do is we'll implement it a little bit differently. Wrapped value, that is going to give you access to the actual wrapped value, and then we can also set this. So value equals to whatever the new value is. Now, what about the error message, like this part? We can put this into a different variable. We can call this message. That's not really going to change, so we can use let over here. There we go. And then the projected value. So var projected value, that is the actual result that you are going to be giving, like the actual message, the return thing. If it's the value is empty, meaning the value of the property, if it's empty, then go ahead and return the message or else return nil. I think we can do it something like this, nil. Okay. We also need a constructor over here or an initializer. So I'll take the initializer where we can say we can get the wrapped value and the message. Then we can assign the wrapped value, whatever you're sending, to the actual value, and the message obviously assigns to the message. So the whole validation part is done in the projected value itself. So this is basically what it is validating. And if it's valid, then, well, it returns you nil, basically nothing. If it is empty, then it returns you the message, which is this message. Username is required, password is required, and so on. So now the question is, well, how do we use it? So the way that we can use it is that we can create a validate function, and this validate function can go right there in the login state. Now, if you don't like login state being inside the content view or inside the main content view, then you can move it out into probably an extension of the content view so that you don't really pollute the actual implementation of the content view. Now, just by moving it out doesn't really make it faster or slower. it just makes it easier on the eyes, meaning that it will be, a little bit easier for you to see what's going on. So I can go ahead and say extension on the content view. You can even rename your content view to the login screen because that is actually the login screen. So I should actually do that, refactor, rename, and we can rename it to login screen because it is login screen, right? And in that extension, now we can move it over there. There we go. Great. So it just makes our login screen a little bit nicer and cleaner. That's pretty much what it does. Okay, so in the login state, now we can actually implement the function, which is validate. And this is going to return an array of errors. So errors will just reset the error to be nothing. And now we can go ahead and try to see if there is any error. So error equals to username. So what this is going to do is this is going to make sure, well, we have the username over here, right? So this is going to access this part. What we're doing is going to make sure that if it is going to get the projected value and all those things, all right? And using this syntax, so if we just type it out over here, you can see $, and sometimes it actually comes up or not, but it's actually giving you username as a string optional, right? Which is right over here, the projected value. So this is going to cause the error or the validation to take place. And now if there is an error, well, we can append this particular error, the username error, right over there. And we have to do the same thing for password also. So we can do this for the same thing for the password. In the end, you will return errors. Like all the errors that are generated by the login state, you will simply return it back. Okay? Next, we'll go back to the login screen. Login screen right now, you can see that we are already creating the login state over here. That's perfectly fine. To capture all the errors, we can create another state because eventually we want to display the errors also, right? So we'll just go ahead and create errors, string, something like that. Okay? So this is going to be catching all the errors and then we can display it. So now the question becomes, well, how do we use it? Currently, we don't even have a button to fire the validation. But even if we do have the button, how do we use it? Now, before we jump into that, let's go ahead and first of all, thank the sponsors of this video. This video is brought to you by AzamSharp School, which is one of the largest catalogs for iOS development videos and courses. You can check out all of my courses by going to azamsharp.school. This is a brand new course that I have just released. This is so much fun to work with. It uses the MV pattern and it creates a complete, you're going to learn how to make a complete SwiftUI application integrated with ExpressJS and Postgres SQL database. This is around 15-hour long course. Make sure to watch the course video to get a better idea of how this course works. And this course also shows you how you can integrate with Stripe API. You can see the course content. I mean, this just goes on and on forever, right? And this was just such a fun to create and work on this course. And you will learn a lot because you will be building a full stack application. So make sure that you get this course. This is just one of a kind course. There is no other course on iOS development that teaches you full stack iOS development with Node.js, ExpressJS, or any other thing. And the great thing about this is once you learn it by using Node.js and ExpressJS, you can take those skills to Vapor or PHP or ASP.NET, web APIs or Ruby on Rails, any other thing. So this is definitely going to be your stepping stone if you want to get into iOS development with full stack iOS development. All right. So check out the link in the video description. I'll also make sure to include a 20% off coupon that you can use to get this course. Thank you so much. All right, so welcome back again. So the next thing that we want to do is obviously to add a button. So I'll add a button like login. All right. And when you call login, we can call login state.validate. This is going to return bunch of errors. And if the errors is empty, then, well, we are logged in and go ahead and perform the login. But if errors are not empty, then it will be our job to display the errors. So if the errors is not empty, then go ahead and display the errors. And how do we display the error? It's completely up to you. I mean, it's just errors is simply an array of strings, so you can just display any way you like. So self, error in, and I'm just taking a very simplistic approach over here, but I'm sure you get the idea of how you can display the errors. The error style, again, is completely up to you. What error style, whatever you're using, whatever font you're using, and all that stuff. Okay. Let's see over here. It should be errors, not error. Okay, so if I don't write anything in username and password and press login, you can see username is required, password is required. If I go ahead and simply type in my username, password is now required. If I type in password, well, everything is good now. Now, one of the great things about this approach is that this is completely extensible. This means that if later you're like, oh, I am going to add an email also, right? So let's go to our login state and add an email. There we go. Now, email has to be in a certain format, right? It has to be in an email format with something something at something something whatever.com or whatever the email is. So we need to make sure that email is in a particular format. So the good thing is that this solution is completely extensible, which means that we can go ahead and introduce a new property wrapper. Again, you can call it anything you want. Like I'm going to just paste it over here like a regular expression validator. And we can use this new property wrapper and we can decorate it on properties that require validating for regular expression, which in our case is email. So I can go to email over here and I can decorate it with some sort of a pattern that checks for email. All right. Now I'm putting the pattern right over here, but you can create your enums or whatever you want to do, or a constant value with static variables, whatever, and you can just embed it over there. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just writing this pattern over here. And you can, by the way, use any pattern you want. I mean, you don't have to use this email pattern. All right, just ask ChatGPT and it can create an email pattern or whatever you're looking for, whatever pattern you're looking for. And now I can say over here, email error obviously for email. All right. And we will add email error. And I think that's pretty much it. I think we do need to add email also. So let's go ahead and add a text field. Call it email and login state.email. Okay, so if I go ahead and press over here, you can actually see username is required, password is required, invalid email format. And if I enter something over here, let's say ABC, and over here also ABC and ABC, still it's not really in an email format, so that's why it's complaining, and now it's gone. All right, so this is how we can accomplish that part. Now, one of the things, if you go over here, and maybe we can find those examples if we look for it, but sometimes we won't be able to find it. But you'll see that actually it doesn't really look like that they have an example for that. Oh, okay, yeah, they have one example that I can see. See that this example? This is, by the way, C# and ASP.NET. Not every single property will be dependent on one single property wrapper or one single validation rule. They can have multiple rules also. A decimal property over here needs to belong between 1 and 100, but also they have like a display format. I mean, it's not really a validation rule, I guess, but they have a display format that it will display like this. But in our case, we can have, cases where we can have multiple things, like multiple validation rules. And I can already start thinking of, what about email? I mean, email is required, right? So we should be able to say email is required. Now, if we try to do that, it's not really going to work, and you can see that it is giving some errors over here. So how can we make sure that when you have a property like email, which is required and which should also conform to a particular regular expression, it can do both? And that is something that we will be looking at in the future video. We will use a little bit of a different approach instead of putting two different property wrappers on it, because it makes things a little bit difficult, but we'll use a little bit of a different approach for that case. But if you want to already, you're thinking about it and you're like, well, I need the answer right now, then you can go to AzamSharp.com, go to articles, and check out the ultimate guide to validation patterns in SwiftUI. And if you scroll down, you'll find the solution, right? If you scroll down, you'll find that I'm creating something called a validate somewhere. Let's see over here. Yeah, so I'm creating like a validate property wrapper, and this allows you to perform different kinds of validation like required, regular expression, and so on. So you can actually do that. And one thing that I would like to ask is, if you are reading this article, and hopefully you're going to enjoy the article, please use the share button. I just added the share button on a couple of articles, so make sure that you press the share button on LinkedIn or Twitter and share it with other people, because they're going to, read it and they're going to enjoy it, they're going to find interesting, and they're going to also share it. So that's definitely going to help. But apart from that, yeah, the code will be available in the YouTube description, so you can definitely enjoy the code and read through the code. Let me know if you have any suggestions to improve the code. And once again, check out AzamSharp.School. I have a lot of courses over there that you're going to enjoy. And if you like AzamSharp.School, please also share it. It definitely will help. I'm spending a lot of time on creating these courses. I mean, you can see the list of these courses. This is just going on forever, right? So I'm spending a lot of time creating these courses, and hopefully you're enjoying it. But we need to tell more people about this. So thank you so much again, and hopefully you have enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up, like, share. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.